So this is why, if you look on the left here, we've got pain is like an iceberg. The impact on someone's life can be hidden. I know that very well. I've lived with chronic pain for over 30 years. And people look at me and go, are you really in pain? I kind of go, do you really want me to describe it all? And there's a whole load of impacts on people's lives, from private life, personal life, friends, family, children if you've got them, wider family, all those expectations, work, money, pain makes you poorer, planning for the future, pensions. All of these can be compromised if you live with chronic pain. And so this is why PPIE in this project is so important, because what we've done in Alleviate is we've brought the lived experiences, and it's not just my lived experience. That's why we have multiple members of the team. They've all brought their lived experiences. We work on inclusivity and listening to each other, and creating a community. And I think we've really created a community here. And we have a purpose. You know, we know that there are people out there living with pain who need help, and working together with the PPIE team has really added urgency to the importance of the work at Alleviate. So with no further ado, I'm going to welcome everyone today. Thank you all very much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the webinar. This is over to Chris and Gordon.
Hi everyone, nice to see you. Susan, can you just make sure that you're recording this, because there's a few people that know what they're recording afterwards.
Yep, it's recording.
Awesome, perfect, thank you very much. So we've got a number of slides to go through here. I'm going to really whiz through a bit of the background, but very quickly, and then we'll cover some of the data aspects of being involved with the Alleviate Pain Hub. We'll cover a bit of the infrastructure as well, and we'll cover a bit of the information governance and what's involved in that when you sign up to be involved in us. So that's the idea. I'll be doing a bit. Our data engineer Adam's going to do a bit, and Chris will also do a bit. So you won't get fatigue from just hearing from me. We'll also do in a couple of minutes just a demonstration of the HDR Gateway and Cohort Discovery tool, just so you can see what that's all about too. So Advanced Pain Discovery Platform, it's a 5-year program initially, got a big chunk of money about 3-4 years ago through a number of funders. The idea being that they're trying to make some advances in chronic pain treatments and get a better understanding of the condition. There's not been any major breakthroughs in a long time, so they're actually trying to do something about this, and you know, it's been attacked from many different levels. But our big part in here is that they're trying to get an online platform to help with the chronic pain, and that's where the Alleviate project kicks in. We work with HDR on a platform to allow discovery of the data. 4 main consortia within the APDP, which we work very closely with, and that's Painstorm, Advantage, CRISP, and CAPE. The idea is that they're running their clinical trials, and when their clinical trials are finished, their data will then come into the Alleviate Pain Hub. So therefore, throughout the entire time of their clinical project, we have check-in points and discussions with them just to make sure the data is getting collected in a nice way and stored in a nice way to make it easy for us to standardize and make it easier for it to be reused at a later date to get the most value out of that data. We are guided by FAIR principles, which is to make data findable. So we're trying to find pain data sets that maybe are not well known. We're trying to make them visible, more visible. We're doing that using the HDR Gateway and using the Cohort Discovery tool, and also through our website, social media, all these different channels, also to our PPI team who do a lot of work promoting what we do and the data sets. We're trying to make them accessible as well, using again the HDR Gateway, so that people actually have a standard path of actually being able to request access to the data. And we're trying to make the data interoperable and reusable by having it collected in a sensible manner, having good documentation around it, and having it in a common standard These principles underlie everything we do within Alleviate. So really, we're trying to find a solution to a common problem. So there's lots of different data sets and academics working in isolation around the UK and around Europe, and they all have their own data sets, which maybe aren't necessarily all that visible, and we're trying to raise the visibility. And raising the visibility isn't just enough, because if you get access to that data and it's in a completely different format to the data that you're using, then there's the whole issue of standardisation. So our big role is to work on the standardisation of those data sets as well, to put them into a common format, and that helps with data discovery and data reuse. And we do this using the OMOP mapping tools called Carrot, that was developed by a previous project to Alleviate called CoConnect. They were developed by the University of Dundee, Nottingham and Edinburgh, and continue to get developed by under Alleviate and by the University of Nottingham. So we have the HDR metadata catalog. So that's one of the places where we make data sets visible. As you can see here, we have a number of data sets that are in the HDR catalog just now, and they are from all over the country. And I'll give you a demo of the catalog in 2 minutes. And then in the HDR gateway, we have an Alleviate collection. So that's all the pain-related data sets that we've worked with and have collected and got their metadata and their scan reports and created lots of background information. They can all be found in this collection on the gateway, and you can just go there and find, you know, what quality of metadata is there, what sort of data fields are in there, any significant publications, that sort of thing is all in there. So it's one-stop shop for sort of finding data sets at the sort of basic level. Currently, we also onboard data sets into the Cohort Discovery tool. We have 3 pain-specific data sets that we've done for that so far. We've got another few in the pipeline, which we'll see in a minute. So I'm going to just go off sharing, and hopefully I can get back to the sharing, and I'll go to the web. Cool. Right, I'm going to share this screen now. Okay. So you should see Cohort Discovery tool website. Anthony, if you could say yes, because I can't see anybody.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So this is the HDR gateway. So within here, you can actually search for different data sets. So, you know, we can do a search for Alleviate. And it actually shows you all the different data sets that are associated with our project. So there's Alleviate, there's pain. And then you can see the different level of metadata quality. So there's silver, there's gold one. So that's Generation Scotland, excellent. Twins UK, HIV pins. So you can actually just click on these data sets and it'll give you the details of what's there. You can also get some technical details sometimes about the different data sets, the different fields that are there, which is, and this one is actually really, because it's gold, it's really good. They're really informative, actually. All of them aren't at that level of quality, but this one's excellent. And then you have a standard way where you can request access, and you click on a make inquiry, and you can enter a basic form, and that'll actually go to the data owner, and they'll get your query. Within that as well, we have the Alleviate collection. So this is Alleviate collection, and it's just a static page, and it contains all the different data sets that are associated with us. So there's 20. The level above this is the Cohort Discovery tool. So that's where you can do row level query of the data for discovery purposes only. So that means that, you know, the data is anonymous, and there is disclosure control checks in there in the background. So any queries that are ran are subject to you know, minimum thresholds. So I'm rounding up. So if the data is below a certain threshold, like 10, it'll return 0. And if the data on the other end, it gets padded up to the nearest 10. So it fudges the data a bit for just to preserve privacy, but gives you the right ballpark to see whether the data that you're interested in is actually already available. So the Cohort Discovery tool looks like this. And what you'll see is currently we have 19 different data sets in the Cohort Discovery tool. We have another 3 in the pipeline as well, so that'll be over 20 soon, and we've got a number of other ones coming down the line. So what I'm going to do is just create a new, yes, so let's go for a new one. Right, so let's do another query. So this is a query builder, and this shows you all the different phenotypic terms that are actually available for searching within that data. So this is only terms that have been found within all the data sets that we've got selected there. So as you can see, because of pre-selected pain, it's showing me all the different pain terms. So let's choose something. Sorry, the little sharing window from Teams gets in the way. Right, muscle pain. We do muscle pain. So when I hit this query, this is going to just pop that query up there, and then all these different data sets will receive that query, run the query against them, and then just return as a number of how many matches, how many rows in that data match the query, and they'll apply the disclosure controls just to preserve privacy. So that's it. All these different data sets are hosted in different virtual machines. Most of them are hosted in virtual machines in the data owner's environment. So they're actually all across the UK. So it's a fully federated system. In that federated system, each of those different machines will actually pull this query down, run them, and then send this aggregate number, just a single number back. And that's all the release. So you see that for that term, Allspac has a substantial number of matches. Track COVID does too. So does CoStar. So you can see that with this tool, you can actually do some anonymous querying of the data to see if actually data exists for the phenotypic terms that you're actually interested in. And then down here, you get some distributions as well on sex and age, which can be very, very useful. So this is Cohort Discovery tool. Now, obviously, we found that Allspac is something that's really interesting here. It's actually got a lot of matches for the data we want. So we can actually just click that. That then takes us through to the HDR gateway, which I mentioned before, and takes you to the entry in that gateway so that you can actually look at more in-depth information about that cohort. And then again, if you're interested in requesting access, you just click at request access, and you'll get up to the point where you can enter a form and request access to that data, and then have a discussion with that data owner about getting access. So this is the Cohort Discovery tool. Now, I did a search just for muscle pain, but obviously you can, you can sort of add other things in there. So do just male, search by age as well as muscle pain, add in anything else like muscle pain and a COVID positive test plus diabetes. You could build up the complexity of the queries as you see fit to try and find out the data you want. I just wanted to do a simple query so you could see it working. So I shall stop sharing there and go back to my slides. And sorry, I'm going fast here because we've got a lot of slides and a lot to cover. So, right. Again, I mentioned in the highlights that we're working on a dashboard for Alleviate to cover the different pain data that we are doing. So the next 3 slides are just some screenshots from the work in process, dashboard that we were going to do. And so this is an idea of Generation Scotland. So that's not a pain-specific data set, so that it has 108 pain concepts, phenotypes within its data. We've got a few of them shown here, a few of the more common ones. And then we also have a more specific one, which is the carpal tunnel syndrome cohort, which is from Oxford. And you can see that it's got less pain concepts within the data set because it's for a very specific research area. And then finally, we've got GOAL again, which is another pain cohort, and it has 12 pain concepts. So we're kind of working on a dashboard for this to get this information out there that'll cover all the different data sets we have in a nice way. And we're kind of working on a cohort paper as well to describe that going forward, just to raise further awareness of what we are doing. I think I'll do this slide and then I'll pass over to Erin for a couple to give my voice a little break. So a big part of what we do is data harmonization and standardization. So with all these different data sets we've got, we've got 20 different data sets that are involved with us just now. And so with those, we are slowly working through them and trying to harmonize the data and standardize it into common formats so the data can be reused. It's a lot of work. Erin will attest to that when she talks in 2 minutes. We are using the Carrot Mapper and Carrot CDM tools, though those were initially developed during the Coconut project, which was a collaboration between Nottingham, Dundee, and Edinburgh mainly. And we continue to develop those tools between us, and they do a good job for us and a solid job. If you go to Carrot for omop.ac.uk, we now have a website up which has all the documentation for those tools. So if you go there, you can have a look. And if you're interested in the tools or using them or having a demo, feel free to get in touch with us and we can do that. We can arrange that. I think the next slide is, over to you, Erin, if I'm not correct. I'll just control the slides for you, Anne.
Yeah, so as Gordon mentioned, we've been standardizing data since quite some time as part of Coconut and now Alleviate. So till now we have mapped about 10 million health records, and there's been a variation of data sets. We've had research cohorts like LSPAC and Generation Scotland, and also population scale clinical data sets, specifically from Public Health Scotland. 3 of their data sets are currently live on the HDR Cohort Discovery tool. Next slide, please. So this is the end goal. We've been continuously talking about data standardization. This is the end goal. This is the schema that we need to achieve. And the main idea behind it is that previous slide. Yeah, so that all the data sets across UK speak the same language. From this diagram, you can see that in the blue box, these are the main components of the OMOP, and the schema is very person-centric. So anything that the person experiences, even a lay person can understand this. So you've got conditions, observations, drugs that the person uses, procedures that the person had, devices that the person was exposed to, measurements and observations. So this gives a very self-explanatory names and the structure to the data, so it could be easily understandable across different domains and experts that are involved in data collection and data processing and research. In the orange box, we have the vocabulary schema. These are the set of vocabularies which we use to standardize the contents of the data. So if we are using one set of vocabulary for the data set, we use it all across the data set, so we can understand that we are talking about the same condition or the same procedure or the same drug. Next slide, please. So as explained earlier, we are trying to standardize the terminologies, data types, units, measurements, and the schema of the data set. But we are also trying to standardize the code of practice. And the code of practice is really important. Basically, it's to standardize the methodology of the whole data flow process, how we pseudonymize the data, and how we transform the data. And this aspect is really important because multiple people are involved in the process. And if we do not standardize the process flow, then there could be variations and issues with the data validation. Yeah, OMOP, I forgot to explain what OMOP was. It basically stands for the Observational Medical Outcomes Partnership. It is an open community data standard. So everyone is aware of it. Everything is public. A lot of people are involved in it. It's not a standard process which is static. It is continuously developing. So as new conditions come in and as new research comes in, changes are made in this common data model to cater to that. Next slide, please. For Alleviate and CoConnect, we developed tools to semi-automate this process. And the reason to semi-automate the process was to make sure that we have a standard methodology to transform the process. Data can be transformed in multiple ways, but if everyone is adopting their own way to transform data, we can still come across variations. So the main idea behind it was that everyone uses the same process flow to make sure that we have a standard set of instructions to transform the data. The whole process flow is divided into 3 steps. We have the first step, A, which is the pre-processing, and then the B step, which is for data mapping, and then the data transformation. In the first step of the data pre-processing, we make sure that the data is pseudonymized, cleaned, reshaped, and extracted. Once we have the data in the standard set of format, then we extract the metadata using an open source tool, which is called White Rabbit. Metadata is basically information about the data. It does not contain the record level information. It just contains what the structure of the data is and what the contents of the data is. So no identifiable information is in that metadata. Using that information, we use the tool, the in-house tool Carrot Mapper, to define the mapping for the data set. That is, what data will map to what OMOP table or what OMOP term. So you can think of it as a set of instructions when you're solving a puzzle. Once we have mapped the data, we extract the JSON file, which includes all these instructions to transform the structure and the contents of the data. Once we have this JSON file, we use it with another tool, which is called Carrot CDM, in conjunction with the source data, and then we transform the data to OMOP. The advantages of this process, there are various advantages, but the main advantages of this process is that the whole process can run without us accessing the data. So if we are working on behalf of a data partner, we can make the mapping rules and they can run the process in their secure network. The other advantage is that the person who's running the transformation at the data partner's end does not need to be savvy, OMOP savvy. They don't need to know what OMOP is, how it's transformed. The tool does everything. The JSON file does everything for them. Thirdly, there is low chance of error because the whole process is automated and standardized. There's less variation, less error. We also have standard mappings. So once the mapping file is developed, it's reused on the data. So if we have a longitudinal data and the process is rerun, we make sure that the mappings stay the same. So the standard file stays the same. Also, we have a data validation at the end of the process. We generate a summary report, which tells you which data could not be transformed. So the end user can know what they need to change or where the problem is occurring. So we also can provide better support to the data partner because we know that same processes followed all across who are using our methodology. And yes, when the data is standardized, because every data set is speaking the same language, we can reuse our research code. We can do collaborative work. And yeah, the data is findable as we've seen through the CDT. So there are a lot of advantages of standardizing these data sets. Next slide, please. So we have quite a bit of data sets that are live now, Gold, WebEx, and Omega 3. 3 data sets are in the validation stage right now, and quite a bit in the progress and pending. So we are hoping to get these move forward as soon as we could. But yeah, in the future, you'd probably have total of 6 data sets under Alleviate umbrella to see on the CDT and query. Yeah. Over to
Thank
you,
you, Aaron. I think Chris is popping in now.
Yes, hello. Thanks everyone for joining, and Aaron for doing that, and Gordon. So yeah, I guess one of the key messages about OMOP as well is that it's a global standard, and lots of institutions are using it. Within Europe, there's an organization called Eden, which has been rolling out the use of OMOP across many partner organizations across the whole of the European continent, and we are part of that network as well. So the advantage of going through all this effort, I mean, it is a big effort, as I guess you can get from what how Aaron explained it, and it's getting easier with the development of the carrot tools and things like that, but it's still quite a manual process to do it. But once you've done it, you only need to do it once for all your different tables of data that you have. So as soon as you update your data, you can update the OMOP version of it as well. So and being part of this global network means that you can start aggregating data across multiple sources of data and do, regional comparisons, national comparisons, international comparisons, and things like that. So we were not Alleviate itself, but HIC, so the Health Informatics Centre here in Dundee, were involved in a project last year looking at COVID side effects, and via OMOP, we were able to combine data across, I can't remember how many different countries, but certainly many countries across Europe and the US, and covering up to 500 million individual patient records to look at COVID. So, but that would only be possible if all the data was standardized, like so. Or if you tried to do it with an unstandardized data, it'd be, it would take you a lot longer to do that. Whereas that project was done in a week or two, and no kidding. So it's a residential thing. You sit down for a week together, and then you write up the week after. So that's really quite impressive. So, given our experience of OMOP, and technically, and also in terms of application across many hundreds of thousands of records, or millions, in fact, of records, we feel we have experience and expertise in this area, so we're providing this as a service. There's a link here for you to look further, So we can do the whole thing from end to end, like Aram has showed you, or we can provide guidance or training or review what you've done. If this is the first time you've done it, then we're happy to do that. And of course, we're more than happy to be included as a collaborator if you want to include OMOP in a research program. So next slide, please. So the other aspect of Alleviate is that, as I mentioned, we're part of, or we're within the Health Informatics Centre. We're hosted within the University of Dundee, and HIC run a trusted research environment and have done for over 10 years now, which has been recently now 2 years ago, migrated to the cloud. So it's flexible and gives you access to compute and storage that you would otherwise be hard pressed to get. And a trusted research environment is a secure environment where you can do data research and analysis within a safe environment with no access to the internet, and so you can use it for sensitive data like patient records to do your analyses. Trusted research environments are 5 SAFEs compliant. Well, ours one is particularly 5 SAFEs compliant, and we're also compliant with or certified with 27001 and also the NHS England DSPT. And so within a research environment, you're provided access to a version of the data which is pseudonymized and segregated from any other data. And you can see how the 5 safes kind of interact a little bit via this diagram. And each one of these safes is kind of like a Swiss cheese model, as it were. The more slices of Swiss cheese you have, none of the holes line up. So if any one of these safes is breached or whatever, the other 4 will make sure that nothing serious happens, and then you can fix that issue. So we have a very strict policy and standard operating procedures for running that. Next slide. And so in Alleviate, we take advantage of that using this model that we have that Gordon demonstrated really well via the Cohort Discovery tool. So if you imagine that Cohort Discovery tool view is that person right on the right-hand side here. I don't know if you can see my mouse actually. Probably not, because I'm not showing my screen. But anyway, the person sat at their desk on the right-hand side is Gordon, or was Gordon just now. But behind all that is this structure, all to the left. And starting from the very left, we have this federated model or this centralized model, and both work interchangeably in that we as Alleviate work with data partners in mapping their data, and then the data partner can choose where they want the data hosted. We can offer our services and host the data within Alleviate, which is the bottom centralized hub bit, or they can choose to run the infrastructure and run the services themselves as a federated spoke, as it were. And in the middle is lots of software shenanigans and magic to make sure that the data remains anonymized and secure, and no one outside of the person at their desk on the right is able to access those queries. And also then return the data in a way that's quite nice and viewable. And then the little right-hand corner at the bottom is the trusted research environment. So like I was saying, the strength of OMOP is that then you can easily aggregate data together. So via Alleviate, once you've identified the pain data sets that you're most interested in, and you've communicated with the data controllers or the data owners of that data, and you've come to an agreement about, actually, yes, we would like to use work together and use that data, then it's very easy for it then to be extracted via Alleviate, via the OMOP model, into the trusted research environment that we have available locally. And that's a kind of a value add that we have here. So next slide, please. And what we're trying to say here, I've not seen the slide before, sorry. Essentially trying to say the same thing. It's this is the Alleviate in a single picture, right? So you have the data within our environment here in Dundee. Everything's secure, both in transfer and in where it's sitting. And there's a secure virtual machine that interfaces with the Innovation Gateway, it's provided by a software platform called BCP or BC Platforms, and it's all securely run. So these connections are all done securely, so there's no risk of leakage or anything like that. So next slide, please. And so this is a slide from HDR describing what the Cohort Discovery tool does and what it's useful for. So if you want to find out more information, go to HDR and you'll find this information here. But I think we've explained and demoed really quite successfully how the value add for that. I mean, before the Cohort Discovery tool existed, there was actually no way for you to be able to identify which data was available for your specific need. You had to contact people who you maybe never spoken to before, or try and identify who might have some data that you might be interested in, and email them and start a conversation. So it might take weeks before you find out actually where the data you want is. Whereas Cohort Discovery tool, as Gordon just showed, it takes a minute, and then you've got a good starting point. So next slide. So we've built up over the last 2 and a bit years now of Alleviate, 2.5 years, 3 strong aspects of Alleviate. So we've talked a lot about the data services, so I won't go over that again. I think as Anthony said right at the beginning, we have embedded the patient voice from the start into Alleviate. So everything that we do is informed by our patient partners, and as you can see, these are our regular fortnightly meetings, and we have several members of the pain group joining us every time, and they always give great input. So and we've also have a much larger pain community, of 320 odd, I think, people now that have signed up for that. And then as we talked about the data sharing, all this OMOP and all this hard work that we've done in the background now makes the data sharing aspect much more straightforward. So next slide. And is this you now, Gordon? Oh, I'll finish off with this one. So essentially, we're enabling and supporting particularly the APDP, the Advanced Pain Discovery Platform partners, around best practices of data management. And not only through standardizing to a particular standard, but also to when we do these mappings, we identify that things that make it easier for us to do these mappings, so we can identify more information about the data, and using data standards which are consistent and clear and things like that. So it's not just technical help, it's also practical help that we provide, and so then that helps us acquire, validate, store, protect data in a consistent and also potentially standardized way. So now I'll hand over to you, Gordon.
Cool. We're just on the home stretch here. I'm just going to cover a bit about IG. So obviously, to be involved in Alleviate, there's a certain level of information governance required. So common thing these days is DPIAs, but the recommendation we've had in the past is that because we don't share any identifiable information, that technically a DPIA isn't needed. But at the same time, for each different data partner, they should speak to their own institution to see whether they feel a DPIA is needed, because some people want the cover of having a DPIA in place. And so that's one aspect. But we do have template DPIAs with lots of boilerplate information that we can provide for people to actually help fill in and inform the DPOs at their institution. The aspect that is needed is a data sharing agreement between us and the data owner. And again, that's a template. So there's two sections to that. One is just the boilerplate agreement, terms and conditions, all the legal stuff. And then there's the second part, which is all about data sharing license and how the data would be shared with Alleviate. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So the template, this is an example of the template. The template is actually there. It's about 80 to 90% filled in. And there was a small amount that each data owner would actually fill in. But it's all highlighted in yellow, and it's just, so it's really simple what you actually need to fill in. And obviously you fill it in, and then you have to run it by your contracts team to make sure that they agree with what's in there and whether they feel that anything needs to be added. But you know, we've came up with an agreement that kind of seems to work for the vast majority of data partners that we've onboarded so far, and it's been relatively smooth process, but still time consuming. So there's different ways of sharing with Alleviate. So one, option A, which I think is the most commonly selected option, is to authorize HIC, which Alleviate is based in HIC, to hold pseudonymized data and to only on-share to other researchers subject to a formal approval by data controller. So in that case, you have full control of everything, and everything goes to you for decision. Option B is to pre-authorize HIC to on-share pseudonymized data to other researchers in the environment subject to controls you define. So you set up what you feel comfortable with, and then we can actually control based on those aspects. And then C is to authorize HIC to use customized pseudonymization against the CAI or the NHSID to enable sort of linkage and on-share of pseudonymized data to other researchers. So that's the three options. Each of them has different levels of control. However, the important point is that data will only ever be provided in anonymized form into a TRE, so the HIC TRE. So nothing identifiable is ever shared, just to be clear. So option A, it means that every time there's a request for data, we seek your approval. Option B is that the data partner can pre-authorize HIC to provide pseudonymized data to other researchers based on conditions that you set up in advance. And option C is data partners will be able to pre-authorize HIC to use custom pseudonymization to link data for the researchers, provide to the researchers. So that's three different options. And option A is so far has been the most common one, but yeah, different people, it's depending on your risk score. And the final slide is impact, future direction. So, I mean, Alleviate's really, especially over the last year, it has developed a lot of relationships within the game community. We now have a lot of regular inquiries from different academics who now know about us and are interested in working with us. Our PPI team is really out there as well, and so we're getting a lot of requests for them to provide feedback on research proposals as well before they're submitted, which is great. We've also got a number of papers underway, so one's lessons learned for how to effectively home up your data. I've also got one on public and patient involvement. You know, ours is a complex data and infrastructure project, so and we've got a successful PPI team, and a lot of people ask how we do that. So we're writing a paper on that. And as I alluded to earlier, we're kind of working on a dashboard now to cover all the data, but we're also working on a cohort paper to describe all the different data sets that are within Alleviate. And the last two things are, one is that we're looking to actually create a OMOP vocabulary for the different pain concepts that we're coming across within all the data sets that we're working with that are not actually currently represented. So we're just working out the best method of doing that. And the big thing is that we are in the process of going for another 3 years of funding. And we're currently working with different partners and gathering partners to be involved in that and putting the themes together for the new funding bid. And you'll be glad to know there's all our collaborative partners. It is a UK-wide project, and we can answer any questions you may have at this point in time.